So in the past, I've done videos about the 3 appeal tracks: the supplemental appeal, the higher level review, and the Board of Veterans Appeals track. So today we're going to talk about the higher level reviews, specifically the informal conferences, what they are, and what a good use of the informal conference is. I'm VA accredited attorney and U.S. Army combat veteran Ed Farmer. So let's get into it. Before we talk a little bit more about the informal conference, let's clear up what the higher level review is. So this is the appeals option where you believe an error was committed in fact or error was committed in law. In this track, you cannot submit any new evidence. So let me tell you what the 3 most common scenarios I use higher level review for. So number 1, the wrong effective date. The VA gets the effective date wrong, I swear, 80% of the time. They'll either assign it to the day you filed the supplemental appeal, even though you've continually prosecuted it, or they'll assign it to the date of the exam. A higher level review is a good option to tell that higher level reviewer, hey, I've continually prosecuted this claim, the effective date is wrong. Next, if the VA fails to consider positive evidence in your file, this is also a good use of the higher level review to point out to the higher level reviewer, hey, I submitted independent medical opinion that wasn't discussed by the examiner and wasn't discussed by the regional office. The VA can't legally just ignore positive evidence, so this is a legal error and a good use of the higher level review. And number 3, the VA asked the examiner the wrong question or the wrong theory of service connection. So this seems to be happening more and more since the PACT Act. They've seemed to have gone the opposite direction, and now they're considering everything as a result of toxic exposure. Just the other day, I had the VA ask audiologist, is the veteran's tinnitus the result of him drinking contaminated water at Camp Lejeune? No, of course not. Even the examiner said, no, it's from his military noise exposure. They still denied the claim, saying it's not related to your toxic exposure. I just want to slap my forehead when you get these types of questions. So that's another good use of the higher level review. I'm not saying these 3 scenarios are the only use. These are just the most common ones where I use the higher level review. To initiate a higher level review, you're going to use VA Form 20-0996. And if you see on the second page there, it gives you an option if you want to schedule an informal conference with a higher level reviewer. So in the past, I've sort of took a shit on these informal conferences. I'm very cynical of the VA. I didn't think they would be helpful. I thought I would just be going up against a hard-headed VA employee who was just going to waste my time and deny it anyways. And sometimes that is still the case. However, let me tell you why I have made the shift and I have started to use informal conferences a little bit more. Before informal conferences, I would just write out an argument why the VA was wrong in their decision. Sometimes I would put that argument right on the VA Form 0996. Well, it turns out it doesn't matter if you say, hey, here's our argument, go check out this argument, go read this. A lot of times the higher level reviewer just ignored it and issued a quick decision denying the claim again. So my thought is I'm going to force these fuckers to listen to what I got to say. And I started scheduling informal conferences. To an extent, this has worked. This has solved my problem of the higher level reviewer not considering my written arguments. That is my personal reason why I have chosen to use the informal conferences. So what is an informal conference, you're probably asking? Well, it's really your opportunity to discuss on the phone with the higher level reviewer what you believe the issue is with your last decision. Now remember, a higher level review, there's no new evidence. You're there to sort of point out what your error in fact or error in law is. So it's your opportunity to say, hey, I filed my 526EZ on this date and you only pay me back to that date. Or I submitted an independent medical opinion and you guys didn't discuss it at all. It makes clear to the higher level reviewer what your issue is with the decision. Here's what it's not. This isn't a hearing, guys. You're not there. Remember, you can't submit new evidence, so you're not there giving testimony because that would be new evidence. And you're not even really there arguing with the higher level reviewer. You're there just to kind of state your position of what you think is wrong. Most of the time, the higher level reviewers are just listening or recording the conversation. In my experience, they don't really say much back. Maybe the good ones do, but for the most part, they're there just listening to what you have to say. In my experience, they haven't even looked at the file. So the more detail you could give them about what your issue is, the better off you'll be. If there's evidence in the file they didn't review, please describe what that evidence is, why it's important, and where they can find it approximately in the file. So approximately the date you submitted that evidence. For the most part, they're also not going to say, yes, you're correct, or you're not correct. They're, again, just listening to you, and then they'll issue a decision later on. In a nutshell, it's a telephone conversation with the higher level reviewer. You're explaining to them what the issue is, and they're listening, and hopefully they refer back to your conversation when they're issuing that decision. Now, does it affect the time and length of your appeal? It's sort of a crapshoot. I've had different experiences. One time I filed a higher level review. I had the conference scheduled the next day, and the higher level reviewer had a decision for me later that day. That was great. There's other cases where I filed the higher level review, 2 months ago, and I still haven't got it scheduled. So there's no rhyme or reason to when these conferences get scheduled. But as I said, it could save you some time by not requiring you have to appeal a second time. So if you could get the higher level reviewer to understand what your issue is, maybe you get a positive decision and you're not forced to pick one of those other appeal tracks. Lastly, I know there's some Barrick attorneys out there on Reddit and some of the other forums kind of giving tips to get a quicker informal conference, or because of a loophole in the VA system. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the VA uses a website sometimes to schedule these informal conferences, and that web link has gone public. And there's people saying, hey, you could get a quicker informal conference if you just put your conference ID of 9999. Come on, guys. The VA has enough problems. They have enough issues scheduling these things. Just don't fuck it up for everybody else. Just wait in line and do your informal conference and wait for your decision. If you need help, get help. There's plenty of accredited representatives out there. Just make sure you pick someone who's experienced, their name appears on the va.gov list of accredited representatives, and that they know what they're doing. So that does it for me, guys. As you see, informal conferences can be a good use of your time. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing, and as always, you have the power to win your VA claim.